Before we get started, you should all know that Maya's voices will be different from now on because we are using a new text-to-speech program, 15.ai. It's by an MIT graduate, and it's free to use, and if you want to use it to emulate characters from My Little Pony, Friendship is Magic, Portal, or TF2, links to it will be in the description so you can use it in your own videos. With that being said, on to the Versus review.
Read the disclaimer, doofus. And please contact us through this email address with questions or fan art. And support this series on Patreon for early access to reviews and credits at the end of videos. Thank you for your support.
Okay, time for a Versus review, because, well, I literally haven't done one since I compared the Hasbro Power Ranger action figures to the Bandai Power Ranger action figures. Salutations, denizens of the internet, I'm Firebite27, and it's time to decide who is the best. Transformers Prime Beast Hunters Vertebreak, or Transformers Kingdom Vertebreak. Let the battle begin!
Going in release order, we start out with Beast Hunters Vertebreak. And oh man, if it wasn't obvious that I wanted this figure to originally be in last year's Halloween review, well, here's all the evidence you need. Bright Halloween and autumny palette, monster assault mode that would be utterly horrific if it was a real animal, and a tail-mounted battle axe like some crazy Metalocalypse Ankylosaurus. The paintwork should also be commended, with a bevy of stripes on his head, his upper arms, his upper legs, and on his backpack, which is actually a missile launcher. Unfortunately, I did not purchase this figure with the missile included, so there's that. In addition to that, we also have some stunning silver on the beak, the chest, and on every single talon. The battle axe head itself also has some silver paint on it, but that won't be important until you reach robot mode. We also have some brown stripes on the chest, and some absolutely piercing lavender eyes. The combination of the colors, the design of the beast mode, and the striping pattern on the figure make it all feel as though this is some manner of gargoyle, or a ghoulish reptilian hellhound guarding the gates to Hades.
Halt, traveler. Whoever approaches the space bridge of death must answer me these questions 3, and then the other side they shall see.
Ask me the questions. I am not afraid.
What is your name?
I am Broadside of Iacon.
What is your quest?
To seek the Holy Grail.
What's the airspeed velocity of an unladen seeker?
What do you mean? Thunder Crackfican or Euro Screamin' Seeker?
I hadn't actually thought that far ahead yet. Ow.
Unfortunately, this is the point where we have to talk about this figure's, quirks, we'll say. The tabs holding the two halves of the chest together are incredibly weak, and consequently, whenever you move the shoulder, it makes it apparent just how hollow the torso really is. Mind you, this is back in the day before Hasbro got good at hiding hollow parts. The stripes do leave this figure looking a little cluttered visually. But apart from those faults, Beast Mode's actually pretty good. In fact, I'll say this now, it's better than Kingdom Vertebreak based on articulation alone. Speaking of, Maya, take it away.
Beast Hunter Vertebreak has a hinge at the jaw, ball-jointed shoulders, swivel at the bicep, ball-jointed wrist, hinge shoulder pad, ball-jointed hips, thigh rotation, and digitigrade lower legs. The ankles are ball-jointed, the cannon is on two hinge joints, and swivels at the peg.
So overall, yeah, Beast Hunters Vertebreak has a very solid alternate mode. No bones about it, he has great articulation and a few flaws, but overall, he's just a solid beast mode. Speaking of bones, let's use this opportunity to awkwardly transition into talking about Kingdom Vertebreak. And based on looks alone, whew, boy howdy is this an improvement on Beast Hunter's Vertebreak. In terms of paint, this feels far less cluttered than the Beast Hunter's Vertebreak did. There aren't any stripes to break it up, there's just nice fade effects in brown and gray. The sculpting on the bones also lends this figure a dynamic sense of realism, which just contributes to the overall awesomeness of this figure. I hate using such a barbaric term, but that is how it feels. Sadly, she's mostly style and no substance. And that is in large part due to her lack of articulation. Maya, if you will.
Kingdom Vertebreak's jaw is hinged. The neck is also hinged. Hips are ball jointed. Knees are hinged. And ankles are ball jointed.
Honestly, compared to the range of articulation on her Beast Hunter's predecessor, this is just freaking disappointing. She's also rather tricky to balance, seeing as how she is incredibly lightweight, like Kingdom Paleotrex. Though, even in spite of this, she still manages to carry herself fairly well, and would probably make a dynamite army builder. Also, the raptor-esque body lends itself to a Jurassic Park reference.
Clever girl.
So overall, Beast Hunter's Vertebreak seems like the clear winner in Beast mode. However, there are still two more categories where Kingdom Vertebreak can take the win, size not being one of them. In other words, size comparisons. Here's Kingdom Vertebreak and Beast Hunter's Vertebreak next to my last review, Energon Megatron, RID 2001 Galvatron in Gargoyle mode, the last Beast former I reviewed on this channel, Kingdom Optimus Primal, Kingdom Vertebrake's skeletal brother from another mother, Kingdom Paleotrex, the last Kingdom figure I reviewed, Kingdom Warpath, a standard Cutama, a standard can of sparkling water, and Broadside. So overall, Beast Hunter's Vertebreak has won this segment due to his articulation. However, there are still two more important segments where Vertebreak from Kingdom can earn her place as the winner. So with that being said, let's transform the both of them.
Extreme dinosaurs! Velocitosses to the max, they buckle them in their tracks! Extreme dinosaurs! The plastic Jurassic Ball! Extreme dinosaurs!
The second category that these two must compete in is the transformation, and in this regard, Vertebreak wins due to the fact that she is simple to transform. Beast Hunter's Vertebreak, on the other hand, is very complicated and difficult to transform, for reasons not least of which being the fact that for some reason the head of the Beast mode and the head of the Robot mode were attached to some peg that was threaded through the torso, and it's very difficult to maneuver the Beast head into its spot in the chest without having this peg pop out. This clip is being played to you at 5 times its original speed, and you can already probably tell that I'm finding Beast Hunter's Vertebrake's transformation a lot harder than Kingdom Vertebrake's, considering I don't seem to have figured it out yet, and that I keep taking it off camera. When it comes to transformations, I have one rule, and that is I cannot take the figure off camera for more than 5 seconds when I record its transformation. Otherwise, in my mind, it has committed a cardinal sin against Transformers. And this is why Kingdom Vertebrake gets the second win in this versus match. But that just leaves us down to one more category that we need to score these figures in, and that is the Robot mode. So how do they fare? Well, considering we started out with Beast Hunters in Beast mode, it's only fair that we start out with Beast Hunters in Robot mode. And I'm not sure how they did it, but somehow the transformation leaves him with a Robot mode that is somehow more shredded than his Beast mode was. How? He honestly comes across as some kind of massive berserker that would be teamed up with Paleotrex in order to take down the mightiest Autobots and Maximals at the beck and call of Megatron. Either Megatron. Vanquishing foe after helpless foe until nothing remains but the scent of scorched metal. Or at least he would if he wasn't covered in the remnants of Guido Mista's pants. Seriously, I don't care what Hasbro executive mandated tiger stripes on a freaking Cybertronian gargoyle dinosaur whatever, but come on! This is pure graphic design 101. Do not add elements just because you can. That makes the design cluttered. Okay, the gun I get. That forms the back of the figure. That makes sense for the tiger stripes. What doesn't make sense is the thighs. Moreover, why have the stripes in 2 colors? That just adds more clutter to the design. And really doesn't make sense for nature, considering that this is supposed to be a natural design element on a robotic creature, which makes it even less sensible. Just why the tiger stripes? Heck, I'll even go as far to admit that I wouldn't have even minded the tiger stripes if they had been slightly more geometrical and also in a uniform color. You do not see that in nature. Animals do not have 4 colors of stripes, at least to my knowledge. Unless they're a cuttlefish, or a chameleon, or literally any animal that can change its color. And speaking of the backs, oh god, this is hideous! Look, I am no Jobby the Hong, but I seriously think that this looks hideous. I don't generally care about backpacks as long as they don't interfere with the figure's ability to stand, and it probably could have been done without using a backpack. Studio Series Cliff Jumper. Oh, and the tail weapon is really stupid. It's made out of soft, flexible plastic, and it looks bad because it's mostly unpainted. You know me. Tail parts forming doesn't bother me as long as the tail is straight and looks like it could deal effective damage. The tail's natural bend doesn't make it look like it would be an effective weapon, especially with the axe head contrasting against this whip-like aesthetic. Just pretend with me that you're holding an axe. The last thing you want to worry about is your axe wrapping around your tree or your opponent when you're cutting them and accidentally hitting you by mistake since your cord is too long. Oh, and you remember all the aforementioned quirks from the Beast mode? Yeah, well, here they are less quirks and more defining flaws. For starters, the kibble on the forearms is freaking redonkulous. You have these entire claws hanging off of his forearms and they just look bad and they flop about because the ball joints are loose. Heck, most of the joints are loose on this figure, and it makes posing him an absolute bitch. The shoulders are the most egregious offenders, especially considering that they're carrying around most of the weapon weight. The chicken legs have also come around to bite us in the ass, as now they have formed these, well, very unstable beast claw feet. On paper, they should be very stable as they have an ankle joint, as well as a wide base at the front, and a heel at the back that is massive. Here's the problem though. The transformation of the digitigrade legs leaves all of the weight from the robot on the back of the heels, effectively removing the support they provide. Not to mention that the Beast mode has some extra stability thanks to an extra pair of legs, which the Robot mode lacks. Though there are a few more things that I like about this Robot mode, such as the fearsome snarling expression on the face sculpt. Although, tragically, from what I've heard, it was originally going to have light piping, but it was removed for some reason. It's such a shame that we went through a dark age without light piping. It's like we didn't know what we had until it was gone, and they paved paradise and put up a parking lot. Did anyone else get that reference to Joni Mitchell and Counting Crows? No? Yeah, that checks out.
Beast Hunter's Vertebreak has a ball-jointed head, ball-jointed shoulder, hinge shoulder pad, bicep swivel, elbow bend, wrist swivel, ball-jointed hip, knee swivel, hinge knee, another bend below the knee, a hinge just above the ankle, and a ball-jointed set ankle.
In all honesty, Beast Hunter's Vertebreak is a solid action figure, but he's super problematic. He can't stand up on his own 2 feet, and frequently falls over, not to mention his aesthetic is super busy and it kinda hurts to look at. Not to mention that all of the ball joints on this figure are super limited from the sculpting, especially when it comes to the shoulders, as the curved spikes at the top actually limit the amount of outward spread you can get. Not to mention that the knee swivel is bloody useless. At best, it works like a thigh swivel, and even then, it just makes it harder to pose because of the digitigrade legs. Also, I love the Dragon Skull Predacon symbol, but it's too small and poorly placed. It should belong on one of the shoulder pads since that's one of the defining features of this design, not on his chest, and preferably bigger than 2 or 3 centimeters big. And his eyes are too small too. Like, I know they're going for a beady-eyed glare, but I swear to God, I forgot that he even had eyes when I was editing this video. And basically, none of these problems are shared with Kingdom Vertebreak. Speaking of, let's start analyzing her. First thing to note, she has way less clutter to her than her older brother did. For starters, her backpack... I'm sorry, what backpack again? There is no backpack here. Sure, there are a pair of arms hanging off the shoulders, but those actually look good. Sure, she has hollow lower arms, but they honestly look fine. Not to mention that you rarely if ever see them from the front. And with Kingdom Vertebreak, the backpack actually had the sense to leave some clearance for weapon storage, unlike the Beast Hunters version, which just let you slap on things wherever you want and hope that no one noticed. It's also fairly ingenious, as the tabs for storing the weapon on the backpack are actually disguised as spikes on the vertebrae themselves. That is thinking smart in terms of weapon storage, not thinking hard. Still not enough for you? Well, I've got good news, because this tail actually looks like a good weapon. It's rigid enough to be a sword, but also fluid enough and curved enough to imply that it could be a whip. No deformed Cheeto Puff meat cleavers for this gal, no sir. Kingdom Vertebreak fights with both style and class before going to pick up her Dinobot girlfriend Slash to go on a date. Also, while her Predacon symbol might be the traditional Predacon symbol and not the cool Dragon Skull Beast Hunters Predacon symbol, it's still really nice to see. Not to mention that I can still see it from most forward-facing angles, even if hers is technically smaller than her older brother's. Then again, most Beast Wars characters had the robots in disguise idea down better than most of the G1 characters, because their Predacon and Maximal symbols were reserved from their robot modes only, removing a huge barrier for the whole idea of robots in disguise and stealth. Having said that, she isn't flawless, and suffers from the same lack of stability that her beast mode suffered from because of her tiny feet. Fortunately, her lighter weight and better distribution of said weight in robot mode allows her to pose far better than the beast mode could. Speaking of, Maya, please enlighten the viewer on the articulation.
Kingdom Vertebrake's head is on a ball joint. Shoulders are ball jointed. Elbows are ball jointed. Hips are ball jointed. Knees are hinged. And ankles are ball jointed.
The big differences between these two figures is that it feels as though Beast Hunters Vertebreak had designers that were overthinking everything, while Kingdom Vertebreak feels almost a little underthought. But this is far from a bad thing. In fact, it's a very good thing, as the simpler transformation lends to better articulation and a better design overall. Not to mention that her head sculpt and face feel far more distinguished from her big brother's face and head sculpt. Like, I mean, they aren't bad. In fact, I think that Beast Hunters Vertebreak has more personality in his skull, but in terms of its overall design, yeah, the attempts at a half-baked skull cone head appearance work far better. And just look at those adorable goggles. I want to squeeze those cheeks so hard. So yeah, overall, Kingdom Vertebreak wins the final round of this versus match, declaring her the absolute winner over this figure. And the best part is, she probably had a smaller budget than Beast Hunters Vertebreak. She's smaller, and she has less plastic, but she feels better overall. And now I should probably address the big convoy in the room. Yes, these two figures come from very different layouts and from very different production designers, but I think it's fair comparing them because, well, they're so close in price, A and B, they're so similar in what they were trying to do. Both figures are signifiers of a resurgence in the popularity of beast modes, as well as a resurgence in creating new characters that probably won't appear on the show. Not to mention that they both literally are dinosaurs. Remember, the Predacons in the Transformers Prime series came from Shockwave, basically cloning Cybertronian dinosaurs, so I think in that regard, the comparison is very apt. Though, in all honesty, I just wanted to make a Versus review because I felt like it A and B my mate Dr. Lockdown made one and it was super fun to watch, so I figured, hey, it might be fun to make one as well. So, yeah. And with that being said, I think it's time for the size comparisons so we can wrap this episode up. Here are the Vertebreaks next to my last review, Energon Megatron, RID 2001 Galvatron, Kingdom Optimus Primal, Kingdom Paleotrex, Kingdom Warpath, a standard Qtama, a standard can of sparkling water, and Broadside.
In closing, I have to say with all confidence that Vertebreak from Beast Hunters is definitely the weaker link here. He's still fun as hell, and I really do like how articulated the beast mode is, and in fact, it actually exceeds the Kingdom Vertebrake's articulation, but this design is ugly and the color schemes were poorly chosen. It feels like a G2 action figure without having the actual genuine charm of being a figure from G2. Vertebreak, on the other hand, knows exactly what it wants to be. It's not confused about being some dragon, manticore, thingy. It wants to be a dinosaur fossil. And on top of that, I'm also known to be a sucker for female characters. Ultimately have to give Vertebreak the higher score of a 8 out of 10. That seems about worthwhile for her. However, the Beast Hunters version of the character will be given a 6.5 out of 10. It's not terrible, but there's better Beast figures out there, even at the time. But with that being said, this is Firebite27, over and out. And don't forget, next time we'll be talking about the best figure from Kingdom.